WTAP looks back on this day in history in today's We the People, celebrating 250 years.
Just after midnight on Christmas morning in 1914, the majority of German troops engaged in World War I ceased firing their guns and artillery and commenced to sing Christmas carols. At certain points along the eastern and western fronts, the soldiers of Russia, France, and Britain even heard brass bands joining the Germans in their joyous singing. The so-called Christmas Truce of 1914 came only 5 months after the outbreak of war in Europe and was one of the last examples of the outdated notion of chivalry between enemies in warfare.
A moment to reflect, a time to remember. Join WTAP in celebrating We the People. Watch This Day in History every day on WTAP News at 6, proudly sponsored by WVU Medicine Camden Clark.